Hi everybody, today we are going to talk about section 7.6. We're talking about what's called a freeze pattern. So a freeze pattern, or your book calls it a border pattern. And you'll see why here in a second, once I start showing them to you. This is a pattern that extends left and right and can be mapped onto itself by a horizontal translation. So what we're doing is we're using the transformations that we've been talking about, and we're creating a pattern. So the translations that, or the transformations that we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about translations, 180-degree rotations, reflections in a horizontal line, reflection in a vertical line, and a horizontal glide reflection that we've talked about already. So what your problems are going to ask you to do is label the freeze patterns. So the translation, we're just going to use a T to represent that. 180-degree rotation, R. Then we've got our reflections, and R's are already taken. So if we're going to reflect over a horizontal line, we're going to use an H. And if we reflect over a vertical line, we're going to use V. So easy way to remember those. And then if we've got a glide reflection, glide starts with G, we're going to use that. So we can use different combinations of those. One that will occur in every problem is going to be translation. So we are going to be repeating the same thing over and over, and so we've got to slide it over to get to the next spot in our pattern. So that one will occur in every single one of your answers. If you're missing T, then make sure you get that in there. So what we're going to look at is we're going to describe the transformations that will map every freeze pattern onto itself. So if I look at A, I've got my waves. Okay? All I'm doing is I'm just repeating the same wave over and over, and then I've got that little dot that goes with it. But there's no reflections, there's no rotations, there's nothing else going on. I'm just sliding the exact same image over and over again. So this is just going to be a translation. And if you want, you can just abbreviate that as T. B, I've now got, I think it looks like a little maze. Okay, I start with this first one here. Okay, in order to get from this first piece to the second piece, obviously I need a translation, but there's more going on. If I notice this point right here is facing down, now it's facing up, now it's back down, up, down. All I'm doing is I'm rotating that image. So I have a rotation of 180 degrees. So I put that R there, and there's going to be all of the transformations that we used to create this pattern. So there's kind of that border pattern. If you guys think of like wallpaper, sometimes people will put borders like these on their wallpaper to kind of break up the room a little bit. Not so popular now, used to be a lot more popular. If we look at C, this one's a little trickier. So what we've got is we have our first unit is actually going to be the first two boxes. I guess they're not really boxes, but they're going to be the two shapes. So this whole thing is what we're working at. The key to these problems, you want to make sure you can figure out what that base unit is and what's going on with it. Okay? So, as mentioned, in order for me to move over to the next piece, then I'm going to have a translation. Everyone's got to have a translation. Then, because I have my, in order for me to go from this image to this image, you can see that there is a reflection along with it. But if I were to reflect over this horizontal line right here, I would end up with my pieces, and excuse my terrible drawing here, but my pieces would end up here and here with my dots there. Again, I apologize for the terrible artwork, but I also have to slide it back up then too. So since I have a reflection and a translation, this is going to be a glide reflection. So I have that G. Then D. Here's my base unit. The easiest thing to key on here is that little piece right there. It's on the left. Now it's on the right. Well, in order to do that, I have to reflect over a vertical line, meaning that, of course, I always have my transformation, and I have a reflection over what kind of a line? Well, that line's going up and down, so that's going to be a vertical reflection. So here is a whole bunch of different combinations of freeze patterns and what they can look like. So translation, we're just going to repeat the comma over and over again. So it's just sliding that same image down. If I'm going to have a translation and 180-degree rotation, obviously, you guys can see translation is going to occur in every one of them. So I've got to spin it. Translation and a horizontal glide reflection, meaning I'm going to reflect over a horizontal line, and then I have to shift it over to get it right back into position. So there's going to be your translation and horizontal glide. Translation with a vertical line reflection, we're going to reflect over a vertical line in between the two images. Then I've got a translation, a horizontal line reflection, and a horizontal glide reflection. So I am going to obviously do my translation. I'm going to put my horizontal line in between there. And so I'm going to reflect it. I'm going to shift it over. There's going to be my glide reflection. Then I'm going to do my I did my reflection. Then I'm going to shift it horizontally and reflect it back up. So it's kind of, you kind of end up making a little bit of a box there, but that's all right. So I've got a translation, 180-degree rotation, a vertical line reflection, and a horizontal glide reflection. So translation, 180-degree rotation, a vertical line reflection. So if I were to rotate this guy, I'm going to rotate it here. I'm going to move it over. Then I'm going to move it over and do my vertical or my horizontal glide reflection. So I'm going to shift it horizontally and then reflect it. So there's a lot going on there. And finally, TRHVG, meaning we have a translation, a 180-degree rotation, horizontal line reflection, vertical line reflection, and a horizontal glide reflection. So it's going to look very much like the THG, but now you're going to have mirrored images as well. So these are really the combinations that you want to know. Those are going to be the ones that we use. So if I look at an example, we've got the mountain adder snake, and I need to categorize the snake skin. Right away, first thing that jumps out to me is I've got a vertical line here that it's symmetric around. So then it also looks like I'm pretty symmetric right around in here. So really, I am repeating this base unit right in here. So what do I have? Well, if I go back to my options, I'm not repeating the same thing over and over. It looks like I might have some rotation in there, but it looks like I've got a little more going on. So I like having that rotation. So it doesn't look like I have just a glide reflection, not just a vertical reflection. Well, it could be this THG. You get your horizontal, your glide reflection. But really, the only one where it looks like I am symmetrical here, up and down, and left and right, that line's not in the right spot, is this THVG. And that's exactly what we've got going on. We've got a TRHVG. Okay, so I've got that translation. Everyone has one. I've got a rotation, horizontal reflection. I've got a vertical reflection. And I've got that glide reflection going on to get that same pattern repeated. Here's kind of like the problem. I like these problems a little better than the snakeskin one because the architecture is where these really come into effect, because you do have your pattern going on, and it's a little easier to see, I think. So the frieze patterns of the ancient Doric buildings are located between the cornice and the architrave, as shown at the right. The frieze patterns consist of alternating sections. Some sections contain a person or a symmetric design. Other sections have very simple patterns of 3 or 4 vertical lines. Portions of the two frieze patterns are shown below. Classify the patterns. So if I look at A, so where are my symmetries? Well, maybe I'll just draw some lines here to help us figure these out real quick. I can see that I'm pretty symmetric right through the middle here. So I can repeat this pattern. Then it looks like I'm pretty symmetric right there. So this one, I've got quite a few things going on. Again, it's got that quad section repeated. So we're going to end up with a translation, of course, my rotation, my horizontal reflection, my vertical reflection, and my glide reflection. When you've got the same four quadrants here, that makes it a little easier. Then part B, it looks like I just have the same image repeated over and over, meaning that the only freeze pattern that I have going on is just going to be a translation. Just moving the guy and the horse, everything faces the same direction, everything stays the same from one image to the next. So there's your homework. Let me know if you have questions. Definitely feel free to ask a neighbor for help or whatever. You guys do a pretty good job of that. So I will see you guys when I get back. If you guys have questions, please let me know.